Hi, welcome to Sites Family Farms. Today we're going to continue our series leading up to the last frost. This is the 7th week prior to your last frost date. We can actually start getting some more things out in the garden today, so we'll talk a little bit about that later. The first thing I always like to cover is things we can do to prepare our garden for the infrastructure of the garden, essentially. Just doing a double check. Do you have watering cans? What is your plan for watering? I've covered in previous videos, because we use the Ruth Stout method, or a modified version of it. We don't really water our garden at all, but I still have a 55-gallon drum of water down in the garden, just if we do see plants that start looking floppy. It's still a little bit early for me to fill that, just because we do have some potential for freezing still. But just making sure that there aren't any cracks. I don't need to get a new one of those. The valves made it through the winter, things like that. Soil. If you are building raised beds, or filling raised beds, or filling planters, thinking about your soil, you don't want to wait until everybody else is trying to buy it. This is still a good time where there are good supplies and plenty of availability at a reasonable price. You can go to your garden center and they should have everything. And if you're getting it delivered, this is again a good time to do it, because you're beating the rush, and you probably can get it delivered when you want it rather than when they're available. Mulch. If you're using a shredded wood mulch, same story as before. If you're trying to use straw, it's getting harder and harder to find as the season goes on. Generally, straw is most available in the fall when it's harvested, because everybody has it. The barns are full. We're getting through winter and getting into the time where animals are going to be outside more. So just making sure you have everything you need there. One final tool check. Going through, making sure nothing's broken, everything's sharp, everything's clean, everything is ready to go. I know personally it would be very frustrating if I was all set to spend a whole day working outside and I had to stop to go purchase a tool, and I'm losing that time doing what I really need to be focused on. So just a quick check through everything you have there. Soil amendment. Do you need to add anything to your soil? Do you need wood ash because you're a little too alkaline? You need to raise the acidity. Are you mixing in compost? Are you mixing in manure? This time of year, you could really only get away with like a rabbit manure. It's a cold manure that you don't have to compost before it goes in. You can flip-flop that in the fall, where you could amend soil with a hot manure like horse or cow or chicken, because they can sit over winter. Or if you have very clay-heavy soil, are you working sand in to kind of make sure that that's breaking up a little easier? These are things to think about and start planning and even doing now. Some of the plants that we can work with, onion seedlings are doing well, but as they get about 6 inches tall, they start to fold over and they're not getting as much light, and they're crowding out the bottom ones. So you can trim them back to between 3 and 4 inches, so we get more of that growth and we can break them apart later. Plants that we can actually put outside, if your soil is workable, you can put carrots, beets, leaf lettuce, spinach, green onions, peas, and a few other varieties like that. With the peas specifically, I really recommend soaking them in warm water for about an hour before you put them in the soil. It just gives them a head start. We have a much better germination rate at that point. We don't pre-germinate those like we do a lot of other seedlings. Just the way that they work, it's not a feasible thing. But that little pre-soak really helps in the warm water. I feel like it gets into the pea a little bit better. But we talked about the soil being workable in a few different cases. What does that mean? It's very rarely, it's not something described, but we all seem to know what it means. So if you take a handful of soil and you squeeze it and open your hand, if it stays clumped together, it's probably too wet. If it crumbles, it's too dry. But if you can just gently move your hand and then it'll crumble, that's what we're talking about with workable soil. Clay heavy soil really never gets to that point, which is why you would amend with sand or silica or some others kind of sand is silica and silica is sand, but some other kind of amendment like that. Um, we're getting to the point where we can start also hardening off our seedlings that are inside. The pepper plants are starting to grow. They're about 2 inches tall on average. Some of them are a little bit larger, and they have gotten their first true set of leaves. So they have that little seedling leaf, those two little leaves that come out, and then you'll get ones that actually look like a pepper plant or a tomato plant or a squash or something like that. The first actual true leaves have started to come out and they're starting to grow. But because we're starting them inside, we run the risk of when we put them outside, when we're ready to plant, that they will burn. The sun will burn them, the wind will just be too much for them. But what you can do is very gently incorporate some of that into their daily regimen. A lot of people will take a fan and blow a little bit of air on their seedlings, and that helps to strengthen the stalks, helps with the wind problem we talked about, but it still doesn't cover the sun issue and the sun actually burning the plant. So what we do is we take all of our seedlings that are ready to be hardened off, and we put them outside on a sunny day for half an hour to an hour, and then we increase that to an hour to 2 hours, so on and so forth. But we make sure that they come in and they don't stay outside for too long. We don't have very intense sun this time of year, so that helps. But if you still leave them out too long, they'll get that bleached, leathery look, and you're just damaging cells, and it's going to be harder for the plant to rebound. And we certainly don't want to do that in addition to transplanting it and shocking it that way. So this is a good time of year to do that. That's all we've got for week 7. Please stay tuned for week 6. Have a good day.